Welcome to Spread in Essence, sports betting football picks podcast on the Nesson Vodcast Podcast Network. I'm Nesson.com's Mike Cole, joined once again, and as always, by Ricky Doyle. Ricky, how are you?
Doing well. Happy November.
Happy November. Week 10 of the NFL season is here. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on in the world around us. I don't think we're going to get into that too much this week, unless you have some sort of
talk about the traffic, right?
So, yeah. So, I was thinking maybe you got some mega 28, futures parlays that you gotta hold on till the end. Yeah, so we're basically halfway through the NFL season. I think we will our show this week will kind of reflect as much. We'll get into a quick review of the NFL trade deadline, which also happened to happen on Tuesday. And then we'll kind of reset our general thoughts, as we tend to do here with the NFL season at the end of our 3 2 and 1 unit picks. Before we dive into football stuff, is there anything you want to get off your chest about anything?
Well, the traffic thing.
I'm still
fuming about that. That was an issue this morning getting in here. No, but I was messaging you at the time. And I think we settled on Wednesday being the worst traffic day.
Yeah, I would like to run a study, get some data, see if the empirical data backs that up, because Wednesdays are tough, man.
But this was a particularly bad Wednesday.
Yeah.
And so I was really trying to come up with an explanation in my head. And I was thought maybe there was some sort of election tie-in. People are, there's that post-election boost in traffic you get every 4 years.
People are motivated to go back to work.
Yeah, there's a lot. I had a lot of time on my hands, so those are the things that were running through my head. But it was not good out there.
I did want to make a quick entry into my run. This is now an unofficial bit. My running list of potential outcomes for hell for me if and when I get there. This has nothing to do with the election, if you can believe that. I did leaves on Saturday. 24 bags of leaves. The thing that, like I said a couple weeks ago, brought up the idea of what is hell, and I think it's just annoying stuff. It's not actually hot.
I've got a hellish scenario for you.
Okay, I'm excited.
So I've been having an issue with my kitchen sink.
Yeah,
where it's just not draining well, and it kind of comes and goes. I've used Drano on it multiple times. That seems to solve the problem for a little bit, but it's not a permanent fix. And so every now and then I just have issues with it going down, and it's been really bad over the last couple of days. And so now I bought more Drano, and I want to put it down, but it takes so long to drain the actual water, because I still have dishes and stuff I got to do, you know. So it's just a constant waiting game of waiting for the water level to go down in the sink.
I like that.
So I can get back in there and
that's
solve this problem.
For the rest of eternity. It's just staring at that sink.
It's like it's like walking up an escalator. I'm making no ground whatsoever. Just waiting for the water to settle.
So the impetus for this was
plumbing issues, I guess, would be my hellish.
I got stuck behind a bus a couple weeks ago, and that was my thing. In my personal hell might just be me being stuck behind a bus for the rest of eternity.
Yep.
Another one might be trying to I'm trying to figure out how to describe this the best way. Trying to put the first scoop of leaves in a bag when it's windy out, and you pick it up and you go to put it in, and you can't keep it open, and the bag falls over.
You're kind of
you end up putting 17 leaves in to try to that'll definitely keep it. No, it's still you almost have to put a cinder block in. So I know they sell those chutes that you can put on. I think that's a bunch of malarkey.
You ever make you a scarecrow guy?
No,
no. I don't know.
We buy scarecrows, but
maybe the kid would like
make them. No, that's one thing to that point. Remember back when we were kids, putting bags in or putting leaves in plastic jack-o'-lantern bags.
Yeah,
that doesn't seem good for the environment. In hindsight.
It's funny. The scarecrows are funny though, making them.
Yeah.
And you're just stuffing jeans with leaves.
Yeah, it is kind of nuts. One aspirational thing to think of maybe as a future career plan, the waste collectors, the garbage men in my neighborhood, my town, they come and pick up the leaf bags. It's quite a delight.
Yeah. That is nice.
But 24 bags at my house alone, there's a bunch. These guys are jumping off, tossing them in. Feels like a great workout. I think you and I could really excel at that.
That would be nice.
That might be something to fall back on if this doesn't work out for us. So now that we've kind of just dicked around for 5 minutes, want to get into the NFL trade deadline. That came and went with really not a whole lot going on, especially Tuesday. The NFL trade deadline is typically slow, boring. Did you have?
I almost forgot about it, to be honest with you, in the moment. Like I thought about it last week more so than the actual deadline day.
I think that's the thing, right? I think teams that made moves that of real consequence probably did most of them before Tuesday. I think you talk about winners and losers. We don't have to get into that, but I think the Chiefs are a clear winner. And I do think I've had this developing opinion. When you look at what the prices were for players that went, I'd kind of be more willing to make moves if I was a contender. I feel like some teams maybe left some meat on the bone where it's like maybe I'm completely undervaluing the value of a 6th-round pick, but it felt like you look at what the Chiefs did, kind of giving up nothing or basically pick swaps to add to their roster. Like I thought that. Like DeAndre Hopkins. Did we talk about this last week? Was that
a little bit? Yeah, I think we touched on it.
He's gonna have 1 or 2 games where he's great. And it took no time for him to do that. So I think I mean, hot take: the Chiefs really did a nice job, and they're gonna be even better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're like obviously the rich get richer, and like these certain teams have these first world problems where it's like if you're in the Chiefs' position, you can go out and get a DeAndre Hopkins and even a Josh Uche to a lesser extent, a guy that you're just going to plug in situationally.
Exactly.
And, not a lot of other teams have that luxury. I think by and large, like looking across the league, though, there were some like semi-interesting moves. Like nothing, again, like the receiver movement over the last, 2-3 weeks has been the main story, obviously. And I do wonder if we'll see more of that, like moving forward. Like next year, will we have another receiver market where it's just like receivers changing teams left and right? But even some of the moves beyond that I thought were kind of interesting. Like obviously the Commanders Marshawn Lattimore deal.
Yeah, like I don't know how good Marshawn Lattimore was, but it was cool.
Yeah, it's just a nice little Zadarius Smith going to the Lions. Like that was a clear area of need.
The Vikings like losing Darius for the season, going out and trading for Cam Robinson, who looked good on Sunday night. Like that's a cool NFL trade, I suppose. So yeah, it wasn't nothing going on.
You're right though. The price points were kind of just. I don't know. It stood out as like, oh, that doesn't seem like a whole lot.
Yeah,
I think maybe because you and I too we're big baseball guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see the prices around the trade deadline for impact players there, and so you try to equate that to the NFL, and it's just apples and oranges.
Is like a 4th-round pick the equivalent of a top 100 prospect? Like I don't, trying to Jimmy Johnson draft chart that figure that out. So.
But it is just like it's a weird thing too where. Going back to the receiver thing, like it feels very easy to plug a receiver into your existing team, whereas some of the other positions, like you're never going to see a top level quarterback move at the trade deadline.
Yeah, which feels like a
huge culture shift.
Although I guess top level, a big name. I guess the Panthers did get calls about Bryce Young, so that's an interesting little wrinkle. But go out and get weird, do something nuts. I thought the Patriots missed the opportunity too to go out and be buyers, take advantage of the market, and you can't sign guys anyway, so nobody wants to play here, so you might as well go out and trade for them.
Especially for a team like them who it's probably becoming less and less of a free agency destination. Like you got to get guys in the building any way you can and start to build something.
And then throw the money at them. Yeah. And be like, here. So, any other trade deadline thoughts?
No.
That's okay. So yeah, I mean, if you've enjoyed the first 5 to 10 minutes of this inane banter, we do this every week. We go live on Thursdays, I think it is, on all YouTube, podcast platforms, Twitch, Facebook, you name it. So we would love if everybody came back and joined us from week to week. All right, let's get into our picks. 3-unit plays. You start us off with your 3-unit pick for this week. Week 10 of the NFL.
All right, 3-unit. I'm going under 46.5 in the Jets-Cardinals game. Very interesting NFC West brewing. I think every team to win the division is at plus value right now, so not a clear runaway. The Cardinals in particular are is there more Jekyll and Hyde team in the NFL than the Cardinals?
That's how you define the Cardinals, right? If they win next week, they're losing next week.
So, they're coming off a 20-point win over Chicago.
Yep.
So I think this is a possible sell high spot on them. They did only muster up 6 points offensively in the second half of that game, and really they're an interesting team. Like you think Cardinals, you think great offense, terrible defense, which is accurate to an extent, but I do wonder if sometimes if we maybe overvalue the offensive side of things. So they scored like those 75 points the first 2 weeks. Since then, 13, 14, 24, 13, 17, 28, 29. That's an average of 19.7 points per game. That would rank 25th in the NFL, one spot ahead of these Jets that they're facing. Their 4 lowest scoring outputs, which were all 17 and under, came against the Lions, the Commanders, the Packers, and the Chargers. Only Washington falls outside the top 8 teams in terms of defensive EPA per play. So I just think that this Cardinals team is susceptible to, when they face a good defense, getting shut down. The Jets fall outside of the top 8 I just mentioned, but, I mean, look, the talent's there, particularly in the secondary. I think they're first in opponent drop-back success rate. So, this could be one of those weeks where the Cardinals offense isn't this high-flying, dynamic offense that you see from time to time. So I think that lends itself to the under, because then on the other side, I'm not totally sold on the Jets offense being right just yet. Like, this is a good spot for them to find their footing. But I think total just seems a little bit high to me for a game that I think is going to be a little uglier than maybe you think.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add there. I mean, you covered all the bases.
I would even consider the line in this game actually swung from the Jets being 1.5 point underdogs to 1.5 point road favorites.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I would.
So I think that's I kind of just want to stay away from the side at this point, but I would consider maybe laying the 1.5 parlayed with the under.
I was going to say, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between, this is probably a real square thing to say, but Jets plus 1.5, Jets minus 1.5. Like, maybe that's a fool's errand to say that, but I think
the Jets way.
If you like the Jets, I think.
Yeah.
I'd rather get them now than if that number goes up any more.
I think if the Jets win this game, it's got to be on the lower scoring side of things. I think that's pretty obvious, but I don't anticipate it being a shootout.
Yeah, probably not. Because the Jets defense is, I guess, probably the best unit in this game.
I think that's fair to say.
Fair, sure. I'm going to the other side of that coin. Coincidentally, I have a game. I'm on a total here, featuring an AFC East team going on the road to take on an NFC West team.
Oh,
I'm taking the over in the Miami Los Angeles Rams game. I believe this is Monday Night Football. Don't hold me to that. I just look at the numbers. I just do schedule on your own time.
Location,
there's a football
whatever.
game on. I'm more about the data and the numbers. Over 50.5. It's a higher number. We're on the wrong side of 49. Obviously, we're on the wrong side of 50 even. But I look at the last 2 weeks for these two teams, and I know it's a small sample size, but I like the direction that each are headed, especially on the offense, and it unsurprisingly coincides with some key returns for the Dolphins. It's obvious they've got Tua Tagovailoa back at quarterback. Since he has returned, they are averaging 27 points per game. That includes a pretty good offensive performance that I didn't see coming last week at Buffalo. Or at least they put up points. In the 4 games previous, they had averaged 10 points per game without him. Miami ranks second by EPA and has the 3rd best passing offense the last 2 weeks. Again, very small sample size. I think that was against, coincidentally, Arizona and Buffalo. So they, do what you will with those numbers, but it's nothing groundbreaking to say that the offense looks better with Tua under center. On the other side, LA's offense has also been top 10 over that same time, 2 weeks, having Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, and I guess that's probably stretching the truth considering didn't Puka get ejected very early in that game. That happened tonight. That was not a fever dream, but that offense obviously has looked better with those two guys in the lineup. I think, you look at how that game ended last week. Matthew Stafford threw an absolute dime for the walk-off touchdown. He remains, I don't want to call him underrated because I think it's almost overrated to say he's underrated at this point, but you just kind of is out in the West. Kind of you forget about him, but every once in a while he'll throw a ball like that or has a game where he throws for 350, and it's like, I think that offense is going to be humming with, there's a ton of familiarity here, whether that's a good or a bad thing with these two coaches. But I think McVay is going to know how to attack a Miami defense that has not been very good since their bye. After having positive expected points from the defense in 3 of the first 5 games, they've been negative the last 2 weeks. By far the worst performances of the season. They've allowed at least 28 points in 4 games this season. It only happened 5 times all last season. These are both defenses, that rank in the bottom third of the league. The Rams defense did have its best non-Raiders performance. You got to consider that its own little area. But when they haven't forced multiple turnovers in a game, they're allowing 26 points per game. I do believe Miami will take care of the ball. So if that's the case, I think we're going to have a track meet on Monday. The number seems high, but then you start thinking like 27-24 gets us home. So I'll take the over in this game and go from there.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if I want to start at the Dolphins side of things or the Rams side of things, because the Rams are a team that we kind of touched on them last week.
Let's go on the Rams real quick,
like that they were
tie the knot with the AFC East.
Yeah, that they were a team that, despite their record, I was like, I think I want to buy some stock in them.
Yeah,
like we've seen them show an ability to turn things around before, and they're just one like the Stafford thing, and like obviously the head coach, like the coach quarterback tandem there, for me, like just as long as they're not totally decimated by injuries, which they have been to this point, I think you got a pretty good floor there.
Yeah,
and within a division where it's kind of just there for the taking, like that's a team I see sneaking into the playoffs and being a problem. Mm-hmm. And so I am a little bit conflicted though when I look at so I mentioned this a few minutes ago that the NFC West has everybody in the division at plus money right now to win. 49ers being the favorite. This is at FanDuel Sportsbook. Plus 105. The Cardinals plus 220. Rams plus 380. And then the Seahawks at 11-1. So part of me does like the idea of buying that stock in the Rams, but the other part of me is like, am I just being an idiot by not taking the 49ers at really their lowest point right now?
Yeah, I mean they're going to get Christian McCaffrey back, so that's a big thing too. If I had to make a bet, I think I would take the Rams just because you see, what was it? What did you say the number was? 2
plus 380.
Plus 380. So you see a 3, almost a 4 in front of that with a team that's a half game back. I understand that it probably might not shake out, but that feels like pretty good value. I also picked them to win the division at the start of the season. So
you got to double down.
With the Jets and the Dolphins, both teams have 6 losses. We talked about how Aaron Rodgers looks a little bit better. I think he's got a passer rating of 115 over the last 2 weeks. They had an impressive, if you want to call it that, I suppose, an important win on Thursday night, Halloween night against Houston. The Dolphins are 2-6. Jets 3-6. The Dolphins are 2-6 with a handful of close losses. They've been in games. They're looking better. Are you willing to buy either of these teams making a push for the playoffs? And if one of them does, who's got the better chance? I don't think there's a clear, obvious answer, but
I don't buy really either. You know what? You could probably talk me into the Dolphins.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
elucidate.
I just, for the reasons you mentioned, offensively, like I think it is pretty amazing how differently they function with Tua at quarterback, and maybe that speaks to their inability to have a competent backup. Like maybe that's something they should really invest more into and going into next season, all things considered. But it is, and it's just like it's really interesting when you consider that. I mean, he has his shortcomings as well, but it's just like there are a few better matches in the NFL than that quarterback system fit. So I like their offensive upside still. The Jets, I'm just kind of totally out on them.
So the Jets are plus 370 to make the playoffs. The Dolphins are plus 490. That's at FanDuel. If I had to pick one, I think I would take the Jets because I thought the schedule was easier. But both these teams have 2 of the easier schedules the rest of the way. Miami's strength of schedule the rest of the way is actually second easiest behind just Tampa Bay. The Jets are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth easiest. So I think you have some chance. I guess it comes down to the quarterback. Do I trust Aaron Rodgers or Tua? Like the thing with Rodgers, you see just a little bit, and you're like, he could do this. But the more I think about it, you're asking for him to thread a very tight needle
I think when you put it that way, I feel even better about the Dolphins pick.
Yeah.
Because I just think Rodgers is mostly washed, and I also just haven't really seen it work in this system with this team, whereas I know what the ceiling is.
Yeah, for like
with
the
Tua
numbers
and the
being that good, it doesn't feel like the eye test is necessarily backed that up. I will say, though, if they win, if the Jets win this week at Arizona, which is not an easy game, they go Arizona, home Indy, home Seattle, at Miami, at Jacksonville, home Rams, and then Buffalo, Miami at the end of the season. So like they could, I feel like they're more. I feel like they're more likely to make it seem close. Whereas like I think the Dolphins have more volatility, but I think the Dolphins have a better chance of actually making the playoffs. If that makes sense. Like,
ultimately,
kind of all over the place.
The deficit might just be too big.
Yeah,
there's a lot of two-win teams.
I know
it's crazy.
Yeah. So, all right. Those are our 3-unit plays. If you want a 3-unit play of your own, you got to come back every week and check out the spread on Nesson's YouTube page, on all of our vodcast and podcast platforms. That includes Apple, Spotify, you name it. Wherever you get your podcasts or your vodcasts, come check us out and all the Nesson offerings that there are. So we meet every Wednesday when we go up on Thursday. So we would love for you to join us this week and every week. All right, what's your 2-unit play?
So I just mentioned the 49ers, and they to me they do feel like a team that they might just, when we get to the end of the year, peak at the right time, and they're right back in the conversation for the Super Bowl. Yep. So this week I'm going to take the 49ers laying 5.5 at Tampa Bay. The 49ers bye could not have come at a more perfect time. Like, this is a situation where I just love the spot, I think. You get them coming off the bye. You have Tampa Bay coming off the short week, gut-wrenching overtime loss in Kansas City, where, like, that felt like a sort of a kitchen sink effort from the Bucs, or, like, that the third loss in a row, like, they kind of left it all out there, and now I could see where this thing might spiral a little bit. Which is I still kind of like the Bucs. Like they play their ass off. Like they're in most games. I like their offense. But this is a game where I could totally see the 49ers coming off the bye and just rolling. Kind of a 2 different weight class situations. I feel a little similar to I did last week with Baltimore and Denver, where it was just like I think these two teams are in totally different spots in their respective conference, and this has the potential to get away from one team. No, I think this is another game where you mentioned the high total in that Dolphins-Rams game. This total at 50.5, so they're expecting a lot of points here as well. For me, that makes the spread north of a field goal, sort of in that dead zone underneath the touchdown, just a little more palatable. Obviously, you mentioned a few minutes ago Christian McCaffrey back. I don't think we can really overstate the importance there, even if he is on probably a pitch count if I was to guess. But I also wonder if the 49ers offense, it hasn't really looked right like we've seen it in previous years. But I mean, they're still second in yards per play, 8th in EPA per play, 6th in points per game. So despite all of the injuries, moving pieces, not really looking right, sitting there with a record we're not accustomed to seeing, it's still a pretty good team and a pretty good offense. And I think that once they find their footing, which they could do this week against a Tampa Bay team that their defense has been pretty atrocious over the last 3 weeks especially. I think this is a game where I think this is one-sided. Yeah,
this is one I looked at too. I think it opened at 6.5 too, and it's down to 5.5. So it tells you everybody's going the other way. But probably just because the number feels too high for some people. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I think if the 49ers do win this, I think they win it going away, because I think you laid out a lot of good points about the Bucs and where they're at right now. Just kind of a tough road to hoe. Yeah, they're like the best team that's lost 3 in a row that I've seen in a long time. Where you just look at the standings and that L3 really stands out, but it's like, when I watch them or when I look at the numbers, it feels like they're better than maybe the results show.
Yeah, so there's a chance they take 2 of those 3, and then we're having a totally different conversation about that team.
And like if they lose this week, I still wouldn't completely sleep on them to win. Maybe not win the division, but get in the playoffs. We were just talking about strength of schedule. They have pretty much by far the easiest schedule. After this week, the toughest opponent still left on their schedule based on where we're at right now is the Chargers. They still have 2 with the Panthers, Raiders, Giants, Saints, and Cowboys. So I'm looking to double back next week if they lose this. Like I kind of want them to.
They'd be sitting there.
I still don't totally trust Atlanta either.
They'd be sitting there at 4-6,
getting swept by Atlanta,
which is like a deficit, obviously, but like not an insurmountable deficit. Not like I look at that and I'm like, oh, that feels a lot more attainable than the Dolphins at 2-6 that we were just talking about. Especially given the state of the NFC.
Well, I was just going to say, too, like, you want to talk narratives, too? Now I can fast forward to January. I can see them rematching with the 49ers and be like, this was the low point of their season. Go. They turned around after that. They lost 4 in a row.
It's the foresight that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. My 2-unit play, right? We're on 2 units. I'm taking Houston catching 3.5 points at home against the Detroit Lions. I guess I'm just jumping on an opportunity to get the field goal plus with the hope that Houston is still going to be closer to what preseason expectations were for them than what we've maybe seen so far this year. Couple tough losses the last few weeks with the Jets loss that we talked about on Halloween. They lost to the Packers at the buzzer a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago. It has not looked as good.
Halloween was only last week.
What?
Halloween?
I know.
How was that only last week?
It's election season.
Not to be the time guy.
I know. Leaves are falling too, let me tell you. Houston, like, I guess if they lose this game and if they get their asses whooped, which is in the range of outcomes against a very good Lions team, maybe it's time to reassess, like, this is not the year that they were going to take the next step. But, again, 3.5 points, it feels like a good spot. They've been kind of in a brutal stretch, but they do typically play close games. 4 of the last 6 have been decided by 4 or fewer. One of those games within the 6-game stretch that wasn't decided by 4 or fewer was a 41-21 win at New England. Pretty big rest advantage. Obviously, they played Thursday night on Halloween. They've had time to digest their candy, move on. They've sat around, waited all week, while Detroit had to go on the road last week. Tough spot, go to Green Bay, win an emotionally charged game, playing 2 road games in a row here. That's a potential letdown coming off of the big win last week against the Packers. With the actual on-field football stuff, Houston sounds like they're going to get Nico Collins back. I still have questions about the Detroit defense that weren't actually answered last week. Sure, Zadarius Smith is going to help them, and I guess like a pass rusher is the kind of guy who can just hit the ground running, but speaking of running, you kind of run on them. The Packers ran the ball at will last week and then inexplicably kind of just got away from it, despite the fact that their quarterback had a sprained groin or whatever it is, and it was raining out, which is dumb. But the Lions have allowed at least 138 yards on the ground in each of the last 3 weeks. Get that run game going for Houston. Set up play action. Set up the deep ball. Tank Dell, Nico Collins. I think this is going to be as close as they're going to be to full strength on offense. I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw from the Lions last week either, as really watching them up close. I know the weather sucked, but the Packers more or less gave them that game. I think you look at the yardage and things like that. The Packers kind of ran all over them, literally and figuratively. So I do think if Houston can just play responsibly, they can hang around here. I think they can match the offensive output that they're going to get from the Lions, and I think this ends up being within the 3.5. I think it's just a field goal game. Probably the Lions probably still do win, but I think Houston, in a last-ditch effort, gives them a real strong effort.
You mentioned a very important point in there, which is if you're ranking weeks that have buys, right around Halloween seems like a nice one.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
like it's nice, especially when Halloween falls on a Thursday.
Yeah, and
you sit around. It's literally a lot of festivities.
Middle of the season too, right? Like good time to recharge. Apple picking is
there's a lot you can just get into around that time of year. The weather is still nice enough to go outside and do some things.
If Houston, you're in what's the weather like in Houston?
Well, I'm just saying generally. Like if you're our northeast team,
it's 75 degrees outside today.
Nice.
So
real
nice. You can go tanning, go to the beach.
One other thing, if I was to hand you $1,000 right now, let's just call it 1,000.
Sure.
Would you rather take the Lions to win the Super Bowl at plus 480, or the Texans at 22-1?
Lions plus 480. But I don't have a lot of money. So
that's why I'm handing you the $1,000 that I'm getting from somebody else too, because I don't have much money either.
I would ask, can I pocket this? And you'd say, no, you have to make a play. And then if that's the case, I need my best possible option here. Detroit is close to running away and hiding in the NFC. And for a team that at least the narrative says they can't go outside, they can't go on the road. I think they answered some of those questions last week for starters, but them being in Detroit for the entirety of the NFC playoffs as opposed to this Houston team, if they do get hot, get in the playoffs, they're going to have to go on the road to Baltimore and or Kansas City. It's just, there's a reason the numbers are different. I think you just look at that Lions team. It's a pretty well-oiled machine. I just trust them a lot more than I do the Texans.
Yeah, who's the second best team in the NFC? According to the odds, it's the 49ers and the Eagles.
Yeah.
They're both 5-1 to win the NFC. And then you get to the Vikings at plus 950, the Falcons plus 950, the Commanders plus 950. But you're right, it is. There's a clear, they're the clear head of the class, and then I don't know. I still kind of like Philly, but
I would probably say the Eagles, just if I was to make a bet on it. So we talked about Nico Collins coming back. Talked about Christian McCaffrey coming back. One thing I kind of conjured up in the group chat was is Christian McCaffrey the most important player to the second half of the 2024 NFL season? Because I think you can make a pretty compelling case where he is. Let's go back and revisit this NFC conversation, right? If he comes back and is fully healthy and gives that offense that element back, you might as well load up on the Niners right now, because you're going to get the best value that you're going to get. If they come out and blow doors, as you kind of talked about,
sure,
the value for betting on them is going to go away.
Because then you're talking about the offense is on par with Detroit's offense,
bingo.
But San Francisco's probably got the better defense, right?
Yeah, I would think, and obviously the pedigree as well. So yeah, the more I think about it, this is something I haven't really given a whole ton of thought to.
That's what we do here. We just throw it out there and see what happens.
But yes, I would think Christian McCaffrey is the most important player in the second half of the NFL.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else would fall into that category.
Jayden Daniels, is that I guess we're talking about the only answer is probably a quarterback if you really wanted to answer it to the fullest.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the list of teams where we can.
But it's because quarterbacks are the most important position. So, is there a guy coming back? I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's McCaffrey. Yeah, I think he makes everything else. It's weird. They are one of the few teams where I think a non-quarterback makes everybody else around them better and takes a lot of pressure off, especially considering all the injuries that they've had as well. I think he's the key to getting them back to being an NFC championship favorite. I don't know if they get there, but I think he's the most likely to get them back.
No, I don't think. I think you're probably right, but I do think that the Nico Collins return is bigger than maybe we're giving it credit for.
Sure. Well, I am. I'm picking the Texans.
Yeah, but I think he's far and away the best receiver on that team.
Yeah.
Even when everybody's healthy, and now that they are dealing with injuries, there, to the point you made at the top, this is sort of a last ditch effort for them to prove that this is a year that they can kind of go all in on. So I think, that offense looks a lot different with him on the field.
Yeah, I agree. When you talk about importance for the stretch run, the second half of the NFL season, the most important and best decision you can make is to subscribe to our podcast, The Spread, on the Nesson family of vodcast and podcast. If you want to catch us in your earbuds, you can get it on Spotify, Apple, or whatever Apple's called at this point, really wherever you get your podcast. If you'd rather look at us, which is also an option, one that I would strongly recommend, you can do that at Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. So lots of places to consume The Spread, which drops every week on Thursday. What is your one-unit pick for Week 10 of the NFL season?
I'm going overseas for the
Forgot about that.
Munich Germany game. Mostly I just want to skin in the game so that when I wake up Sunday morning, I have something to toss on and have a little bit of a rooting interest in. But I'm going to take the Giants laying 5.5 against the Panthers. This number feels like they're trying to bait me into taking the Panthers because it's obviously you'd be hard pressed to find a week where you're comfortable laying 5.5 with the Giants. But I'm not going to take the cheese. I'm just not going to do it. I'm looking to fade Carolina off its win last week. I mean, their previous 5 games prior to beating the Saints, who stink in their own right, obviously, it's firing their coach, losses by 10 points, 26 points, 18 points, 33 points,
Jeez Louise.
14 points. It's an average of 20.2 points per game. And it's not like they were really facing world beaters in that stretch either. So it's just, I mean, I think Carolina is still far and away the worst team in the NFL. We've had this conversation before, like, what do the Giants do well? Because they are a team that's just like, it's hard to find their sort of identity. I guess if you're going to point to one thing, it's they can rush the passer a little bit. They can get after you. 6th highest pass rush grade on Pro Football Focus. Carolina 27th in pass block win rate. Carolina's defense terrible. This could be a game where you just sort of feed your skill players. Malik Neighbors, look at his props. Tyrone Tracy. I think this is just, again, trying to bait me into taking the points with the Panthers. Just not going to do it. Lay them, Giants.
That is, when you sent me your picks this morning, I did not expect to be diving into this one.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's sharp, I guess.
It's my 1 unit for a reason, though.
Yeah.
You don't want to bite off more than you can chew.
No, of course not. I don't have a whole lot to add there because it's not one I had given too much thought.
I'm in now. That's too bad. It's too bad. You need to be.
Trying to make $1,000. I got to start parlaying.
Why else are you going to watch that game?
Yeah. I probably won't, to be honest with you. So I'll defer to you next week.
I will be.
My 1 unit play, I'm taking Pittsburgh, maybe a sucker bet here. Catching 3 on the road at Washington. The Commanders are the talk of the town. I'm still not totally sold. And which is maybe a little bit of speaking out of both sides of my mouth, considering you and I have been basically railing on the Steelers all season. And they're now, 6-2? And more or less locked up a playoff spot.
I like the trade deadline they had too.
I did too, yeah. Yeah, basically getting
just nice pieces.
Complimentary pieces for nothing. That being said, don't think the Commanders, maybe they're good, but let's not get too carried away with what they've done so far. They've got 7 wins. 5 of those have come against the Giants, who they beat twice, who have the 24th DVOA, the Bears, who ranked 23rd, the Panthers, who you were just talking about, ranked 32nd, and the Cleveland Browns, who ranked 30th. Their best wins, their only win, or other wins, Arizona 15th and Cincinnati 17th, and we've had plenty of discussion about Arizona in this episode and how they are Jekyll and Hyde, and we've talked plenty about the Bengals this year and how they might suck. So again, it's been super impressive what they've done with a first-year head coach and a rookie quarterback. It's been really impressive what Cliff Kingsbury has done with that offense. I think they are building something pretty cool, and they're going to be good for a while. We keep kind of trying to circle the game where it comes crashing down for them. This feels like a good opportunity for that to happen. The offensive line has been really good for Washington, and the Steelers' defense maybe isn't as good as you'd think just because of the Steelers, but I do think this is a type of game where they find a way to wreak havoc with Watt up front. I think you look at some of the numbers, really basic stuff, but Pittsburgh's one of the best teams at limiting big plays. They generate takeaways, 15. They're 4th in the league. They have the best red zone defense, top 10 yards per play. I think they're going to come with a responsible game plan, and I think it's going to be very difficult for Daniels and the Commanders to move the ball in a way that they have at various points this season. And even there might be some cracks starting to show even in the last couple of weeks where they certainly didn't play well against the Bears, and it comes down to a Hail Mary for them to win that game. They beat the Giants last week, but sure, it's the Giants. So I don't know. I'm not totally sold
about those Giants.
I know, yeah. Catching a field goal with Mike Tomlin in a game that they just kind of always play well in these spots, it feels like. That's super anecdotal, but I'll grab the points here. Pittsburgh also sneaky good at generating big plays themselves. They're 7th overall in big play differential, so you've got to be getting some to be high in the differential. They're a top 10 team by overall DVOA. When you kind of put together the offense and the defense, they're top 10 by EPA play. So I'm close to having to put some respect on the Steelers' name, I think.
I'll
and they had a good deadline, like you said.
I'll add a trend to your anecdotal evidence there. Mike Tomlin. So here's another way to go about this. Actually, if you want to, what was the total in this game? Because you might want to look at the under.
It's gotta be like 42. I don't know.
So I think the path to victory for the Steelers is probably making it a little ugly.
17-10.
Yeah. So in which case you're going to get to the
total's
the under.
45.5. Excuse me.
Tomlin 85-64-1 to the under in road games in his career, and 55-27-1 since 2015, according to Action Network. So if you
I'd
think
feel a
he's
lot
going
better if I was taking the under here.
Yeah. That's probably how I'll tackle this game.
Okay, yeah. It doesn't really do me much good. I thought you were about to give me a great underdog stat or something. I'm sure he's pretty good as an underdog.
But just, I came across it, figured I'd float it out there for transparency's sake. But on the topic...
an eraser and change that to the total.
On the topic of Tomlin, though, because I floated this to you last week, if we want to look at this game from like a narrative standpoint of Dan Quinn being the front runner for Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
2-1. Tomlin sitting at plus 850. And I think he deserves a little more credit in this market. Like, it's Dan Quinn at 2-1, Sean Payton plus 750, Dan Campbell plus 750, Andy Reid plus 750, and Mike Tomlin plus 850. And if the Steelers knock off the Commanders this week, and they're sitting there at 7-2, Washington will be what? 7-3.
Yeah.
I just look at like with the Commanders, like, all right, you landed the quarterback and everything else is sort of falling into place. I feel like with the Steelers, it's like there was a real dearth of talent. You had this wild quarterback situation that is just like everybody's sort of doubting you at every turn. And then you just manage to sit there at 7-2 and look like you can at least be a tough out in the playoffs. Like, I don't know. I think that number will shrink a lot if they pull the
Steelers go like 11-6. He absolutely should win Coach of the Year.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like a longevity fatigues type thing to where it's like, oh, he's been there forever and he just gets kind of lost in the shuffle. But like, if they end up, if that's sort of the end result of this year, given the expectations coming into the year, that's I think there's certainly a strong case to be made.
Who's more likely to win a playoff game, the Commanders or the Steelers? Because it feels like they're both going to get in, barring a bit of a meltdown.
I would probably lean Commanders just because I think the NFC is such that
that's fair.
Like anybody could get anybody in the early going.
I also feel like I'm probably buying the hype a little too much. Daniels could steal a game. Not steal a game, but just be like awesome. Yeah.
100%.
And then they crash into a wall the week after. But yeah, it's interesting that these two teams are combined 13 wins through the
Steelers, like,
it's nuts.
If they get, if they're a team that they get in, like, do you feel good about the Steelers against, I don't know, what the Steelers Chargers would be some great old school
that would
football.
Look great. It would be like 1995 all over again. That would be a very ugly game with a total set at about 14.5. No, actually, that's a good point.
Baltimore.
Like, you look at who they're going to play. There's not a whole lot of games that you'd feel good about taking that, man. Maybe he gets a number, but not to win outright. So, all right. Before we get out of here, let's do a quick reset of the first half of the season. One thing I kind of mentioned that we could do here is just kind of go back and look at our takes that maybe have not aged as well.
Oh, nice.
Is there anything that you said at the start of the season that you think is aged very poorly?
I'm sure.
I've got the receipts, but I wasn't sure if there was something that you can.
The Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings.
So you had the Minnesota Vikings under 5.5 wins this year. Have they hit the over already?
I think so. Yeah.
That must be an adjusted number, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the Vikings are pretty good. Yeah. That's a tough one for you. I'm just trying to look through this to see if I have anything that I feel really bad about. But these are all really good. I don't know what to tell you.
I loved my Will Anderson Defensive Player of the Year. I was offered a cash out on that. And then he got hurt.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. So when the week that you were gone, actually, when Andre Kachtorian was in here, him and I kind of we called the good, bad, and the ugly. Kind of the good and the bad were teams that we thought would exceed or underperform expectations. One team that I thought would exceed expectations was the Tennessee Titans. I think they are going nowhere fast. Obviously, despite a very dramatic win last week against the New England Patriots. One team I thought would be bad, which felt like I was kind of in the right lane for a little bit, was the Eagles. Now I'm sitting here saying, like, I think the Eagles have a good chance of winning the conference. It feels directionally correct, but let's talk about the Eagles real quick. Do you buy what they're like? Are they?
I'm in on the Eagles.
Have they avoided?
Because I was like, in on the Eagles.
Was it bad ever? I guess it was.
I think they
some turbulence.
There was turbulence, injuries. Like I feel like they've sort of weathered the storm and come out of the other side of it. And
are they kind of under the radar too?
I think that offense is awesome.
Yeah.
When it's clicking, everybody's healthy. It's better than the offense that went to the Super Bowl, right? Like now you have the Saquon Barkley element.
Yep.
Like that's a team that I would not want to run into them in the NFC.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. I'm trying to see if there's any other stuff in here that we did pretty well.
I still can't shake the Bengals.
Joe Burrow, most regular season passing touchdowns. I'm not sure. Well,
it's in play. That's in play at 5 last week.
Yeah,
got 20.
Yeah, that's true. Chiefs Chargers 1-2 exact finish. You had that in the AFC West.
Okay.
So
that's in play.
I had the Ravens win the AFC North. That was my 3-unit play for the AFC, and then I had Patriots last remaining winless team. Technically, very wrong because they lost week one or they won week one, but directionally correct. Xavier Worthy, offensive rookie of the year, 19-1, probably not going to get me. Oh, here's another one for you. Most regular season passing yards. Do you remember who you?
Dak Prescott.
Dak Prescott, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be tough to hit.
If he gets it, it would be very impressive. If there's ever a time to double down, it's right now.
Speaking of Andre, this would be a great episode to bring him back in to talk Cooper Rush and that whole quarterback situation.
That's a good point. Yeah, I almost reached out
and
to him.
Why the Cowboys aren't going to Trey Lance.
See how he is doing, but
maybe we circle back next week and
I think they should have traded for Aaron Rodgers. That would have been that's the thing we're talking about, like exciting, cool, like trades. Then be like, let's get Mike McCarthy.
yeah, there you go.
That would have been sick.
Do it for the plot.
You got anything else?
No.
All right, let's go do our actual job. That's Ricky. I'm Mike. This has been The Spread, NESN's Sports Betting Picks podcast. Thank you for joining us on all of the platforms that we've mentioned. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.